Emily never imagined that the man she loved, Mark, could hide a dark secret so terrifying, one that would shatter her world and force her to fight for survival against the husband she thought she knew. Emily had always believed in the goodness of people, especially the man she married. Mark was everything she had ever hoped for in a husband: handsome, successful, and attentive. They met in college, a chance encounter that quickly blossomed into a deep connection. From the outside, their life looked flawless. They bought a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood filled with friendly families and well-manicured lawns. Every weekend, they would take long walks, share dinners with friends, and talk about their dreams for the future. To Emily, Mark was her rock, her safe place in a chaotic world. The early days of their marriage were filled with laughter and hope. Mark had a promising career in marketing, and Emily worked part-time as a graphic designer. Their schedules often kept them busy, but they always found time for each other. Mark was a natural storyteller, and Emily loved listening to his tales of office drama or his plans for the next big project. He seemed driven but grounded, always making her feel like the center of his world. Yet, as the months passed, subtle changes began to creep into their relationship. Mark's once warm and open demeanor slowly shifted into something more closed off. He started working late nights more often, claiming extra projects demanded his attention. Emily tried not to worry, telling herself it was just a temporary phase, something that would pass once the big campaign was over. But she couldn't shake a growing sense of unease that settled in the pit of her stomach. Small things began to bother her in ways they never had before. Mark's phone was almost always face down on the table, and he guarded it closely, refusing to share his passwords or messages. When Emily asked questions, he would smile and change the subject, telling her not to be paranoid. Yet the distance between them widened with each passing day. Friends noticed too. Emily's closest friend once mentioned that Mark seemed different, less himself. But Emily dismissed the concerns, unwilling to believe that the man she loved could be hiding something from her. She told herself that every marriage had its rough patches and that Mark's stress was just a part of life. Then came the strange noises at night. At first, Emily thought it was just the house settling or the wind outside. But soon, the sounds became more persistent, soft thuds and scraping noises coming from the basement. When she asked Mark about it, he insisted there was nothing there, that she must have imagined it. Despite his reassurances, Emily's curiosity grew stronger. She tried to ignore the feeling that something was wrong, but it gnawed at her day and night. One afternoon, while cleaning the laundry room, Emily noticed something odd. A section of the basement wall looked different, as if it had been repaired recently. The paint was fresher, and the texture didn't match the rest of the room. Something about it didn't sit right with her. She tried to bring it up with Mark, but he brushed her off, saying she was overthinking things. Despite his dismissals, Emily couldn't forget about that wall. On several occasions, she found herself standing in the basement, staring at the suspicious patch, wondering what secrets it might be hiding. She wished she had the courage to confront Mark, but fear held her back. What if she was wrong? What if she was imagining danger where there was none? The thought of shattering the perfect life she had built with Mark was unbearable. Yet, as the weeks went by, Emily's world began to unravel quietly. Mark's smiles became forced, his words fewer. The late nights grew longer, and the strange noises continued. Her once safe home now felt like a place full of shadows. She began to question everything she thought she knew about her husband. Had she really married the man she thought she did? Or was there something darker lurking beneath his charming exterior? Emily's heart was heavy with doubt, but she tried to hold on to hope. She told herself that love was about trust, that Mark had reasons for his strange behavior. But deep down, she knew that the perfect life they had promised each other was starting to crack, and no matter how tightly she held on, the truth was waiting to break through, a truth she never imagined she would face. The receipt was small and crumpled, almost easy to miss, But when Emily found it tucked inside the pocket of Mark's jacket, a cold wave of unease washed over her. It was from a hardware store, and the list of items was strange: several lengths of rope, a large roll of duct tape, a set of heavy-duty gloves, and some containers of chemicals marked as industrial cleaners. None of it made sense to her. Mark wasn't the type to spend money on these things, and certainly not without telling her. When she asked herself why he would need such items, the questions multiplied, but the answers remained buried behind his silence. Mark claimed he was planning a new hobby, a do-it-yourself project in the basement, something to fix up the house himself. At first, Emily wanted to believe him. It sounded harmless enough, and she didn't want to start an argument without proof. But the unease grew as days passed, and the basement remained closed off to her. Mark became protective of the space, locking the door and keeping the key on his person at all times. One night, when Mark was asleep, Emily crept down the stairs, heart pounding in her chest. The basement was dark, colder than the rest of the house. She fumbled for the light switch, and when the bulb flickered on, her eyes scanned the room quickly. The tools were neatly stacked, and there was evidence of recent use: fresh sawdust and newly cut wood. But something else caught her eye: a loose panel near the far wall that didn't seem to belong. It was a small square, barely noticeable, unless you looked closely. Curiosity overcame fear, and Emily pried at the edges. The panel shifted just enough for her to slip her fingers inside. Behind it was a narrow, hidden compartment. Inside lay a small, locked box. It was old and heavy, with scratches across its surface. The lock was rusted, but sturdy. Emily's hands trembled as she held it, wondering what secrets it might hold. That night, sleep deserted her. Her mind raced through every possibility. Was this a harmless collection of old tools, or something far more sinister? The basement no longer felt like a place for repairs. It felt like a prison built for secrets. She thought about the strange noises she had heard and Mark's distant behavior, and the pieces of the puzzle refused to fit together. Days later, Mark's mood shifted again. He was colder, sharper, and more distant than ever. Emily found herself walking on eggshells, trying not to provoke his anger or suspicion. He began insisting she avoid certain topics and discouraged her from talking to friends about their private life. Isolation crept in slowly but surely that Emily's closest friends noticed the change too. They reached out with concern, but Emily was too afraid to admit her fears. Confiding in someone felt like exposing the cracks in the carefully constructed facade. Instead, she kept her worries locked inside, carrying the burden alone. Then came the night when everything changed. Emily heard a sound from the basement again, but this time it was different. A muffled thud followed by hurried footsteps. She stayed frozen, heart racing, waiting to hear Mark's footsteps on the stairs. But silence followed. When she finally worked up the courage to check, the basement door was slightly ajar. Mark was nowhere to be found. The house felt emptier than ever. The strange items in the hardware receipt, the locked box, the noises, suddenly they weren't just oddities. They were warnings. Emily realized that Mark had been hiding something dark and dangerous. The quiet man she thought she knew had layers she couldn't begin to understand. Her instincts screamed at her to get help, but who would believe her? No evidence, no proof, just suspicion and fear. She felt trapped, caught between the desire to uncover the truth and the terrifying possibility of what that truth might be. The perfect life was gone, replaced by shadows and secrets that refused to stay buried. Emily kept the locked box hidden in her room, desperate to find a way to open it without Mark knowing. Each night, she wrestled with fear and hope, desperate to uncover what lay inside and desperate to protect herself from a man who had become a stranger. The life she had once dreamed of was unraveling, and she was only beginning to understand how far Mark might go to keep his secrets safe. Mark's disappearance sent shockwaves through Emily's life. One morning, she woke to find the bed beside her empty, the house eerily silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. There was no note, no message, no sign of where he might have gone. His phone was gone, along with his keys and wallet. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Panic set in quickly. Emily called his office, but no one had seen him all day. She reached out to friends and neighbors, hoping someone might know where Mark was, but no one had heard from him or seen him leave the house. His absence felt like a cold shadow stretching over everything she had known. The police were called, and an official missing person report was filed, but with no leads and no apparent motive, the investigation stalled almost immediately. Days turned into weeks. Emily felt herself unraveling, caught in a nightmare where answers were just out of reach. She scoured Mark's belongings again, hoping to find clues, anything that might explain why he disappeared. Then, tucked away, beneath a loose floorboard in their bedroom, she found a small, worn envelope she hadn't noticed before. Inside were photographs, images of a woman Emily didn't recognize. The photos showed the woman in distress, with bruises and marks on her arms, as if she had been held against her will. There were also journal entries, written in Mark's neat handwriting. The words chilled her. Confessions of secrets he kept hidden, plans he had made, and a disturbing obsession that twisted everything she thought she knew about him. The journal revealed Mark's darkest side, a man capable of deception and cruelty beneath the mask of a loving husband. Emily handed the evidence over to the police. Suddenly, the missing woman in the photographs became the key to understanding Mark's disappearance. Investigators traced the woman's identity and discovered she had been reported missing months earlier from a neighboring town. Authorities connected the dots and uncovered a disturbing truth. Mark had been living a double life. His late nights at work were a lie. Instead, he had been visiting a secluded cabin in the woods, a place hidden from the world where he kept the woman captive. The chemicals and tools from the hardware store were part of a sinister plan to erase any evidence of his crimes. The basement in their home was more than just a workshop. It had been modified to conceal his secrets that Mark's disappearance was no accident. It was a calculated escape once he realized the walls were closing in. Police launched a manhunt, piecing together his movements from surveillance footage, phone records, and witness reports. The charming man Emily thought she knew was a dangerous fugitive, hiding in the shadows. As the investigation gained momentum, Emily struggled with the reality of her situation. The betrayal was overwhelming. The life she had built with Mark was built on lies and hidden horrors. She was left grappling with fear and disbelief, trying to find strength to face what lay ahead. Despite the darkness, Emily refused to give up. She cooperated fully with the police and became a crucial part of the effort to bring Mark to justice. Each day was a battle between hope and despair, but she held on to the belief that the truth would come to light and that she could reclaim her life from the shadows cast by her husband's crimes. The perfect life was gone forever, replaced by a chilling story of deception, danger, and survival. Emily's world had been shattered, but her courage was beginning to shine through the darkness, a beacon guiding her toward justice and healing. The revelation hit like a storm breaking over a calm sea. When the police pieced together the connection between Mark and the missing woman, everything changed. The charming husband Emily had loved was not who he seemed. The man she thought she knew was living a dangerous double life, filled with secrets too dark to imagine. Investigators uncovered that the secluded cabin Mark had visited was a sinister hideout, hidden deep in the woods just outside their town. It was far enough away that few people ever noticed anyone coming or going. Inside, the police found evidence of captivity, makeshift restraints, scattered belongings, and signs of struggle. Most chilling of all was the knowledge that the missing woman had been held there against her will for months. The chemicals Mark had bought were revealed to be part of a cruel plan to erase any evidence of his crimes. They were used to clean and cover up traces of his presence, but despite his efforts, The authorities found enough to piece together the horrifying truth. The basement in their home, once just a place for tools and repairs, had been modified with secret compartments and soundproofing, designed to hide his dark activities from Emily's eyes. Emily felt numb as the details emerged. The man who had whispered promises of forever had betrayed her in the worst way imaginable. His obsession with control and secrecy had turned their home into a prison of lies. She couldn't comprehend how someone she had trusted so deeply could harbor such cruelty and deception. As the police investigation unfolded, Mark's name became infamous. His disappearance was no longer a mystery. It was a desperate attempt to escape the consequences of his actions. Surveillance footage placed him near the cabin just days before he vanished. Phone records showed communication with unknown contacts, hinting at a plan to flee. The manhunt grew urgent. Police issued warrants and alerts, combing through nearby towns and surrounding areas. The community that once admired Mark now watched with suspicion and fear, realizing that the friendly neighbor had been hiding a terrifying secret. Emily was thrust into the spotlight, suddenly a key witness in a case that captured national attention. The media descended, and every detail of her life was scrutinized. Despite the pressure, she remained determined to see justice done. She shared her story with investigators, offering insight into Mark's behavior and the subtle warning signs she had missed. Her courage inspired others to come forward with their own experiences, painting a broader picture of Mark's dangerous nature. The truth was painful but necessary. Emily knew that only by facing the darkness head-on could she find a way to heal. Then, after weeks of searching, the breakthrough came. Mark was found hiding in an abandoned farmhouse miles away from his cabin. Exhausted and desperate, he was taken into custody without resistance. The relief was immense, but the wounds ran deep. The woman who had been held captive was rescued, her body fragile but alive. Her recovery would be long and difficult, shadowed by trauma that would not easily fade. Emily visited her, offering support and strength from a place of shared pain and survival. Mark faced charges of kidnapping, assault, and multiple other crimes. The courtroom became the stage for a story of betrayal and cruelty. As the full extent of his actions was revealed, Emily watched from the sidelines, determined to reclaim her life from the wreckage he had left behind. Through it all, Emily found an inner strength she never knew she had. The nightmare that had shattered her world could not define her. Instead, she became a symbol of resilience, a woman who refused to be broken by the darkness she had faced. The truth had finally come to light, exposing the terrible price of secrets kept too long. But with justice underway, Emily took the first steps toward healing, knowing the road ahead would be hard, but that she was no longer alone in the fight. After Mark was found and arrested, the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. But for Emily, the ordeal was far from over. The nightmare had ended, but the scars it left behind were deep and lasting. She was left to pick up the shattered pieces of her life, learning to navigate a world forever changed by betrayal and fear. The woman Mark had held captive was rescued, alive but fragile. Her recovery was slow and painful, both physically and emotionally. Emily visited her in the hospital, offering quiet support without words. They shared a bond forged by suffering, a connection that gave Emily a new sense of purpose. She realized that beyond her own pain, there was a responsibility to help others who had been hurt by Mark's cruelty. The legal process moved forward, dragging Emily back into memories she wished she could forget. Mark's trial was a public spectacle, with chilling evidence laid bare for all to see. Photographs, journal entries, and testimonies painted a picture of a man consumed by darkness and control. Emily testified, her voice steady despite the weight of reliving the horrors. She wanted the truth to be known, not just for herself, but for the woman who had been imprisoned and for anyone else who might have suffered in silence. Mark was convicted on multiple charges, including kidnapping, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. The sentence was severe but necessary. It was a final chapter in a story that had upended so many lives. As he was led away, Emily felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, sorrow, and a cautious hope for the future. Healing was not easy. Emily struggled with trust and the shadows that lingered long after Mark was gone. The home they had shared, once a place of comfort, now felt haunted by memories. She moved out, seeking distance and peace. Slowly, she rebuilt her life, piece by piece, with the support of friends, family, and counselors who helped her navigate the trauma. Emily became an advocate, speaking out about the hidden dangers of domestic abuse and control. She shared her story to raise awareness, hoping to help others recognize warning signs before it was too late. Her voice became a beacon for survivors, a testament to resilience and courage. Though the scars remained, Emily refused to let her past define her. She found strength in small victories: a morning without fear, a friendship rekindled, a day lived without looking over her shoulder. Each step forward was a testament to her will to survive and thrive. The story of Mark and Emily is a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind the most familiar faces. It shows how appearances can deceive and how courage is born from confronting the darkest truths. Emily's journey is one of survival, justice, and healing, a journey that continues even as the shadows fade. She never thought her husband would go that far, is more than a tale of betrayal. It is a story of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit that refuses to be crushed, no matter how deep the wounds. Emily's life was forever changed, but her story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, light can be found.